people want to be fed the shit, and
Right.
it is what they want. And you make the shit, and you say, "This is the shit. Check it out," and it is. That's the way it works in my mind.
Hey, David, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. I'm good. Trying to find the screen here. Where did it go? There it is. What's up, man?
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm awesome. Matthew joining us or just you,
Yeah, it
David?
should be.
Okay, cool, man. Um, I'm Adam. We've met a couple times before. We did this over 3 years ago now before your second album came out.
Yeah, it really shows that we're dedicated to our crafts, doesn't it, man?
Right, yeah. And then I actually interviewed you all like 6+ years ago when I was on 91X in San Diego.
Oh, sick, sick.
Yeah.
Now was that the acoustic show that we did
Yeah,
out there, or
yeah,
were we
you
in like?
you
I'm
all
trying to remember that. Or
yeah,
were we at the festival?
well, you did the festival. I didn't interview you guys there. It was when you did that, yeah, acoustic, the X session in that like wooden studio. You remember that?
Very much remember that. Very much
Yeah.
remember that. Very
And
much
I just
remember that.
and still to this day, that was the best X session I have ever seen after, all those years being there.
I
I was like,
A little behind the scenes. I remember being nervous like really nervous because that was like a little bit we weren't doing a lot of those sessions, and I was like at the time I was really just starting to play keys, and I was like or all these things, and I was like, "Oh man, I hope I don't mess this up." I remember being pretty
yeah,
nervous about that.
yeah. Matthew was playing keys, and you were playing this crazy like drum beat thing. Like you had this like cool setup going on.
It's never, yeah, our setup for playing always is dictated by something that we want to accomplish musically. So, and that's always been my job to kind of figure out the space to fill in a little bit with him on keys and stuff like that. So it's fun, live is always fun like that for us.
Yeah, it was like I said, still to this day. We were playing Bottom of the Deep Blue Sea, I think at the time, and I was like, damn, like this. I can still listen to that X session, and it's still incredible. But
You
hey,
remember
what's
that
up,
one,
Matthew?
Matthew? The one in the studio that was all wooden?
Yeah, I do. In
That
San Diego.
91X one, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Telling David, I interviewed you all there like 6 years ago, and then you guys came on this podcast before the second album, and it was in the middle of COVID, and you're about to release that record in like October 2020, and
Yeah,
uh,
actually, I remember that last session or podcast we did together. I thought that was great. I know we were talking
awesome.
about the eco-friendly stuff for shows. I remember us
Yeah,
like briefly
yeah,
talking about that.
yeah. I'm excited to, kind of pick up and see because you didn't have villains, and obviously this new it's like massive double album or 4 vinyl album that you have coming out now of all the EPs. You just have so much going on, and I'm really excited to hear about it.
Hell yeah, man.
Cool. I don't know if you all mind just recapping quickly on the just where you kind of guys came from, and then we'll get into obviously all the new stuff.
Yeah,
You
David,
just mean like,
Yeah,
yeah,
just like born and raised. I remember David, you're from what, south of Houston, I
yeah, yeah.
think. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, the origin story of
Yeah, a
us
little, yeah,
slash
short origin
Missio.
story. If
Yeah,
people
yeah.
want to know the deep one, they can go back and watch the first interview.
I got you. I got you. Yeah. So the short of it is, I'm kind of a chameleon. I do a bunch of different things, and that's really my journey through the music business has been that. I met Matthew, working my way up as an audio engineer in Austin, Texas. I did grow up south of Houston in Lake Jackson, and spent my
Hmm.
time growing up in Houston area, and then moved to Austin for school and whatnot, and eventually kind of started to be mentored by a producer named Dwight Baker here in town, and I started engineering, and we met and had just like a really creative connection. He was in a different band, and I was producing his band, and that's how we met. And then that led to him eventually writing some solo stuff that he was calling Missio. And he was like, "Yo, we had such a good time. Let's do this." And at that time, I had kind of worked my way up at that studio to where I was actually running it. And so this became the like side project at that big studio Matchbox here in Austin. and I was just doing it. This was my passion project, and it was obviously Matthew's passion project. And somehow I slowly finagled my way into the band. But no, it's really based on our friendship, truly, and our passion for songwriting. And I mean, I think that's evidenced by here we are in our fifth album, doing like a double deluxe album,
Yeah.
26 song monster. You know.
Crazy. I didn't ask you last time because you talked about being in a band in high school, but you said like your family dynamic was more like academics and sports. It wasn't where Matthew, you had a totally different experience where your family was like, you need to play an instrument until you're in seventh grade, or and you kind of dove into choir. I remember we were talking about that a bit, but David, did you like pick up an instrument early? Or I think you said something about being in a band in high school. Like
Yeah, so I distinctly remember from one of my buddies buying a $30, like he bought the guitar from a pawn shop. So it was like second, third hand, whatever it was. I bought it from him because he was going to throw it in the trash. It was probably like this big little toy. And I really took me like a few times of picking it up and putting it down and my fingers hurting, you know. But
Sure.
eventually I was like making music on that piece of crap, and like that turned into like a really starter Martin acoustic, which then I was like, oh shit, I gotta be in a band. So quickly I was trying to get an electric. I was plugging into like radio systems to try to make my guitar loud before I had an amp. It was just like, yeah, I was just ready to be loud.
And then did that take you to Austin as far as like, did you go to school for music? I mean, because what you're doing now is all
It
the
was
production and audio engineering, or before this band,
my
obviously.
life was complicated and I was still figuring it out. And like I said, my dad was really heavy-handed with me, and like almost militant with I was going to go to a good academic college. And I mean, there was no, it's hard to argue with my dad. And so anyways, I ended up going to the University of Texas studying business, and after that even was still afraid to confront my dad fully and follow my dream. I mean, we had many like of the most passionate fights of my life, telling him like right after I was graduating college, I was like, hey, I think I'm gonna not get a job. I think I'm gonna do music. And that didn't fly. And so yeah, my life was always like this like appeasing my dad and like
Mhm.
checking that box just enough to check the box and then doing as much as I could on the side for me. And I always had bands. Even I went to school in Austin because it was a music city, and I thought, hey, this is where I'm going to launch my band. And it is what I did. I graduated. I ended up being a tech consultant, big Fortune 500 tech consultant for
Damn.
4 years. Bought this house that I live in and said fuck off to everybody and quit. And then that was it. And like 2 years later, I met Matthew.
Wow. I'm just curious on that. With it, does your like now that you guys have very successful band. This is gonna be your fifth album, and was he supportive now, or was there a moment that he like
Bro,
saw you
my life
perform and was like,
feels
damn?
like it felt like a tragedy in this moment because we signed our deal with RCA, and I thought literally in my head, like, oh, my dad is gonna, and like that year he left our family, and I haven't really
Oh my
spoken
gosh,
to him
I'm
since.
sorry. I
No,
didn't
I
mean to
mean
hear that.
it's my story. It's my story. He's I love my dad, and he taught me like for the longest point of my life, he was like my hero, like
Mhm.
the guy that I thought was like the perfect dude, like. And then obviously I started butting heads with him when I started, maybe like realizing that I was built a little differently.
Mhm.
He had to do what he had to do, and he left and did what he did. And it was, I mean, so much of our music for me, the darkness and the anger that comes through specifically on this record is still 100% like me being mad at him, or being mad at him through the perspective of my mom even, and stuff like that. It's been, my life has been a, like, you look back and you're like, I did all that shit to appease this one person. But I don't have any regret because I took every piece of it. I learned, and I like I said, I did me on the side all the time, and I wouldn't be who I am today without 4 years of tech consulting. I mean, that sounds crazy, but I learned a lot and I had fun while I was doing it too.
Yeah, and learn that you want to do probably music more,
Oh,
you know,
dude,
and then when
I'm the
that
guy in the
happens, you're like, all
studio when it gets bad.
right.
Hey, it could be worse, guys. We could be doing at a corporate cubicle desk. I've been there.
Sure.
I've been there and it sucks. And this is way better. And, you know, you got to have that passion to want to be
100%.
in the room, you know?
Yeah. And Matthew, like I said, you told me was that you were kind of totally different, where it was like your family was like, you have to play an instrument, right? Until you're in seventh grade or sixth or seventh grade.
Yeah, I took a much different approach as far as David's lifestyle, more of like a druggy college dropout vibe. But
Mhm.
I knew that I love music and I had a passion for it, and that's kind of the what I wanted to do. So I was always trying to chase ways to go do that. So early on, my parents had me in doing choirs and classical piano and things like that. And back in the day, when you're a kid, that's the most uncool thing that you could possibly do while your friends are playing sports and like other cool things. So I was always really embarrassed by it, but they would never let me quit. And so I think that that kind of played into my drug use, where I never felt like I could express myself in the way that I wanted to. And we also grew up super religiously as well. So like I couldn't really express myself in the way that I appeared or dressed. And so I felt like I was living this life that I didn't really care about. But now looking back as an adult, it was one of the coolest things that they kind of saw some of my gifts, because they kept me in music basically, because they saw something and they wanted me to kind of succeed in that area. And so now being a full-time musician and artist, I'm thankful for that decision, but it
Mhm.
definitely led to a lot of chaos growing up, I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I'm an addict and alcoholic in recovery, so I can definitely relate to that story. And I remember you saying something earlier or last time about that's when you were like around 18, you were in rehab or something, and that's when you started writing songs, right?
Yeah, yeah, I had kind of dabbled a little bit in high school, just, through knowing music, but I didn't really take into account that that was something as a viable option I could do for a living. And so in rehab, when I would, write to express my feelings, and it almost like a journal, basically, there were a couple people in there that were like, "Bro, you're actually amazing. Like you should really try to do that." And I was like, I mean, I guess like this is just kind of getting me through this really difficult situation right now. And then it just kind of transpired into something that I kind of did more and more. I started to realize that like being in a band was an option. Like that's something that I could pick. Could have been a dumb option, but luckily it worked out. But um, I just fell in love with songwriting specifically because I had always been more on the technical side of like, again, being in choirs and like being a small part of a much larger thing. And now, you're in a band, you're one of a few members, and you have to bring a lot more to the process. So it was really interesting to kind of start breaking into the songwriting world and just kind of learning about production, learning about how to dissect a song. Like I remember vividly the one moment where I met this guy, Chad Carruthers, and he told me how he listened to music. And at that time, I had only listened to a song kind of like from a macro view.
Mhm.
And he was like, no, 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 listen to what this piano is doing. Listen to what this string part's doing. Listen to the bass part. And I remember listening to X and Y by Coldplay on the way home from meeting up with him. And every single song was different to me because I was like, I never heard that bass part. I never
Mhm.
heard that piano part. I never heard, like, I started to break it out as a producer does. And I was like, oh, I want to do that shit. Like that's cool. That's amazing. I've never experienced it like that. And then it fucked me because now I can't listen to music in the same way ever again. It's always broken out to me now. So
Yeah, that's
um,
funny. I was gonna say I've interviewed other artists that went through like, very technical like scoring and knowing what notes go together and all the like music theory, and then they'll listen to something and be like, oh, it shouldn't go that way, or you kind of hear things differently. But if you don't have the knowledge, maybe you're putting chords together and it just runs into something that people enjoy anyway. But it's like you're hearing different things when you're listening to songs versus just, okay, I like the song, the melody's cool, and I like the lyrics or whatever.
I
yeah.
mean, Missio, for me personally, when we started, that is what Missio was for me. There was a line in the sand that was pre-Missio. I was a guitar player and I had only played guitar in every band I had ever played in. I was a producer that also played guitar, and I couldn't play any keys. And obviously, whatever with the bass, I was a guitar player, so every guitar player's like, well, of course I could play the bass.
Play the root note.
Yeah, yeah, right. But like, I obviously had great appreciation for everything, and but like, I felt so burnt out on the guitar at that moment in my life where I felt like even my writing, I was doing cliche tricks on the guitar to fill out the songs and stuff. And so I was like, I reached a point, and it was just kind of at the same time, I was like, no more guitar for me. I'm not writing with guitar. I'm only gonna write with this. And then that, like, the first Missio record had no guitar on it, none. And like no, it was very like, it was kind of like, in at least for me, it was like kind of like moving forward into this new space that I needed to not have my crutches to make sure that this new space was defined. And now we're in that space. We know Missio, and we're adding all of this stuff in, and it's really fun because we have it in our bag, you know?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think on the latest song you all released, there's, or the last few, I mean, there's guitars on it, right? The beginning's
Oh
like,
yeah.
yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, there's major, like, it's a major change in terms of, like, in some sense. I mean, if you're not listening like that, like Matthew described, like really like nuanced, then it's not a major change. It's just like, hey, this is more sounds coming through the speaker that make me feel X emotion,
Hmm.
angry, happy, excited. They make me want to dance. They make me whatever. So I prefer to listen to music like that, you
Hmm.
know, and that's really how Missio does things without like too much like identifying with like a drummer, a guitar player, a bass player. It's like, let's just make some sounds that are cool for this song that help us feel this song.
Hmm. With Matthew, when you at 18, when you're writing those songs, you were in a, is that when you joined Homestead? I know you're in a band, or you said you're in a band in high school, I believe, which had a cool name or something about Inhale the Ashes, or I
Yeah, oh,
think,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but it's still a dope
Oh,
name.
yeah,
And
I
then you were
still
in,
give him a high five on that high school band name. He's got
right,
like a cool
still, I mean, other interviews with artists I've had, they'll tell me like, oh yeah, I was in this band in high school, and they'll tell me the name, and they're kind of embarrassed. I'm like, dude, that's like such a great name.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
did you join or start Homestead after that? Because I know uh Missio was what, your, it was like your project, and then you went in to record some of those songs, and that's when David and you kind of got together, right? As far as
Yeah,
doing this.
I don't think Homestead wasn't a band until I was probably 21, I'd
Oh,
say.
okay, so this is a
So
little later.
yeah, I was well out of rehab at that point. Getting into alcoholism, which I didn't know at the time was a struggle of mine, because
Uh-huh.
I had thought like, oh, I'm addicted to hard drugs, not alcohol, and so I was
Sure.
getting into kind of partying in that way. But yeah, I started that whole project around probably 2021, somewhere in there. And then after that, that band kind of broke up because people were getting married and not as much interest as me. I felt like I was the only one working in that band, which is ironic enough because I feel like even in the band that David was in, we both were the hardest working people in our bands. And so we both kind of would lament about the fact that we were in these bands that the other people didn't really give a fuck about. And we're over here just
Hmm.
like working our asses off. We're like, dude, why aren't we getting the passion that you and I have? And so I think it organically worked out to where when we started working together, we were like, dude, this is amazing because we both actually want to be here. We both actually want to work. We want to show up to the studio. We want to do 15-hour days. Like that's no problem at all. And then, you know, I was moving in with David and his wife as well. So we would be writing all day, every day,
Yeah, it
working
became a
and talking
problem
about
actually. We
things.
had to figure out how to take weekends off and stuff, and just so that we didn't go crazy. But I think just to add one point, because I think it's really important in that moment that he's like, yeah, we were the hardest working people in the bands and stuff. We were also both in bands that we're kind of like forcing positive music into the spectrum, and like really trying to be radio bands and trying to
Hmm.
like make it. I mean, shit, we wanted to make it, you know, and that's how you made it. And like I specifically remember like Matthew had all these dark songs and that his band were like, yo, we can't, this is just, what are you doing? And you know, the same thing with my band. Looking back, it was just like, where's the darkness going to come out? Where's the balance going to come out? And so we both had this like space where we're just like, I think frustrated ready to get out the darkness a
Mhm.
little bit more than the pop projects that we'd been kind of working in all of this time, effort, like pretty like exhaustively working at,
Mhm.
you know?
It's kind of ironic that going and doing what you all wanted to do with the darker stuff ended up landing the radio and all the other things, right? I mean, you guys
Yeah.
were independent when Alt Nation started to pioneer your music, and then now you have a bunch of
I
huge
mean, dude,
songs.
the first song that ever really took off for us in a real way was on the top like 50 of Spotify at the time when they had those top 50 charts, whatever. And it was
Yeah.
I Don't Even Care About You. And I just always laugh at that because I love the title in that song.
Uh-huh.
But it's just funny that yeah, coming from a really positive space, and then you come out with a song, I Don't Even Care About You. And that's the
It's
big
the
one, you
biggest
know?
one, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That's too funny. So you had 2 EPs right before Loner came out, or were those both was that pre you officially joining David? Or like, 'cause I know, like you said, you kind of
I
Matthew had the
feel
songs, and then you kind of just became
the
a member because it was like, why not? We're writing a music
the
together.
if there's a line that I would say the first EP he wrote most of that, like he wrote that, brought it in, and I like heavy-handedly produced like without anything holding me back. But like from that point forward, I'm pretty sure we were writing together on a lot of that stuff. Uh and yeah, but if yeah, is that how you remember it, Matthew? It's been a second.
Um, I think that was still a bunch of my stuff, but I think you had done even more production type
This
stuff on the second
my
one.
writing in real talk went like has gone like that in terms of our collaboration, in terms of what we're doing, and frankly Matthew's production was zero, and now he brings songs in, they're like, yo, that is don't even need to touch it, it's great. Like, so we both coming in had our very clear weaknesses and strengths, and now I think there's a lot of a more distributed balance.
Mhm. I think the last time we spoke, yeah, Can You Feel the Sun was about to come out. It hadn't came out yet, I think, because you had The Darker the Weather, The Better the Man, and then it was, like, fairly quickly after you released that record, I think you guys went in the studio to work on Can You Feel the Sun.
Yeah. I feel like that's one of our most slept on records, and I think it's one of our greatest. Like there are some amazing songs on that album that I wish people would uh wake up to a little bit.
The Can You Feel the Sun album?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an awesome record. I mean, and it had big hits on it, I feel like, but you feel like that one kinda got slept on?
Yeah, I mean, just because of the time we dropped it, it was COVID period. There were lots
That's
of
true.
bands doing thing. Like it was just like kind of a strange time. And then honestly, we still haven't really been able to tour that album because the world's been kicking back, and like we're kind of just getting going back to touring this year. So I think that kind of played a little part into it. But I go back and I listen to that album all the time, and I'm like, dude, there were some things that David and I were going through in life that really came out in some of those songs that I just find amazing. So anytime somebody brings it up, I'm like, yes, dude, that record's fucking rad.
Yeah, I think I mean, going kind of David, you touched on, the whole thing with your father and all that. You were talking about that was kind of able to come out. A lot of that came out, right, during that process of that album.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like, in a sense, and I still feel like this weird, like, connection with that record because we experienced all of these things, like this really, like, these low points before COVID happened. And
Mhm.
we wrote this whole record about kind of feeling positivity when you can't. Can You Feel the Sun is essentially like trying to figure out your way forward, and like, and it's just like it felt like a gift that was given for COVID once people started having that experience, and then was like, oh my gosh, we dropped this record. This is, I mean, personally, that was what drove the decision to drop the record. It's like, this is what people need. People need new music. This is what I need. I need to release this. This is relevant to me right now. This is what we wrote. This feels right. And I think just like the way we feel about it is just really everything since then has been, the music business is redefining itself. We haven't really been able to tour in the same way, and so what we've kind of fallen back on in our huge uncertainty of what even Missio represents truly in the music business is just our love for songwriting. And that is like, you can get lost in like, is this resonating? Is this a hit? Is this as big of a hit as it was? Or what's my band doing? Are we growing? Is this like, you can get lost in those trains of thoughts. I mean, they're important. You have to have them. You have to be smart, but like, you have to know what you are. And we are songwriters, and we are a band that loves to write. And so when in doubt, we blaze forward, with or without the marketing plan. That's just how we are. That's just what we want to do. And I'm proud of that. And I'm proud that we've stuck to that. And, like Villain, we released completely without a label, That's, I mean, to me, that's, but again, high school me looking at my band now is like 2 thumbs up. I'm a fan, I'm in. So that's the guy I'm still am really, and I'm still trying to like make happy.
Yeah, with that, I mean, not only that you didn't get to tour because of COVID, right? And then you put out another album, and it sounds like even in that time, it's like, how do you kind of, a lot of bands, and you guys included, like, you missed out on the whole like marketing promo side really of an entire album cycle. And I remember, Matthew, you said about the album, like that album, you guys really came into it with, instead of like touching on what you said, David, like comparing yourself to other bands and other people, and like they have this slot or this going on, and you said going into that album, you're kind of like, fuck it, like we're just gonna do what we're gonna do.
Yeah, no doubt. And I feel like now even more so, we're kind of tapped into that mindset. We've both done a lot of maturing, I'd say, in the last couple of years, and just kind of waking up to, it's weird. I feel like COVID was one of the best things that happened to our world, and it's terrible things too, but like mentally speaking, woke people up to the reality of, hey, maybe I don't have to work as much anymore, or hey, maybe I can spend more time with my family, or hey, maybe I do need to take care of my mental health more, like whatever that is for each individual. And I think I woke up to the fact that I was chasing this like celebrity type dream of being this rock star artist. And then I started to, maybe it's social media, but like seeing how uncool people actually are. Like even people that I really thought were super dope growing up at these rock stars or whatever. And then you get an insight into their lives, and you see how they treat people and their families and stuff. And you're like, man, I don't actually want that at all. Or you like get a glimpse into Hollywood, and you're like, man, that's terrible. And you meet rich people, and you're like, why are they miserable? And like you start to wake up. Maybe it's just growing up, I'm not sure. I think that has given me a sense of purpose in my own way, because I want to be myself. I want to treat people well. I am okay just being a songwriter in Austin, Texas now, and not necessarily needing to be some massive fucking rock star. Like, I would rather make a difference, like even frankly, just like locally. I mean, if you're actually going to be able to impact people rather than like be this worshipped God, so to speak, and kind of be miserable through life. Like life is, you get one life, and I want to make sure that life is dope, and I'm not just chasing these things that just are going to make me miserable in the long run. So I think waking up to that fact has given me more freedom as an artist to just go, fuck it, man. Like if this is the song that makes me resonate and feel something, then we're going to drop it. I don't care if it's a hit. I don't care if it's going to make us tons of money. I would love to make money, sure. But if this makes me feel something, I know it's going to make hundreds, thousands of other people feel the exact same way. And I would rather chase that than the material stuff any day.
Yeah, I mean, and you guys have had continual success with everything that you put out, regardless. I mean, going back to even what you were saying about the other bands, like trying to write the pop radio hit, and then you guys did what you wanted, and it was like, oh, that became the big moment for you all. Kind
Yeah.
of going back to doing what you guys want to do. You said Villain was put out because the next records are going to be on Nettwerk, correct?
That's
And
correct.
so, yeah, you did Villain independently. That wasn't even in the, I mean, that was years after we spoke, but going into an album independently, did you feel like free, like a totally different, like going into that, how much different is it not having to worry about maybe A&R or other people like getting their mitts on what you all are doing?
I think what led us to that spot was our collective experiences from working, with the biggest of labels. And then like we had, we worked with BMG on our second record and
Mhm.
RCA on our first two. And I mean, like different varying experiences each record, but like the constant was Matthew and I doing all the creative, all of the heavy lifting, all of the, I mean, there were various pieces that were for sure helping, but we got to this point, it was like, what are they doing? And like I mean, there are a list of things, and we could get in, and that's a whole different podcast where we could like talk about this stuff because it's crazy. And I could actually get on many soapboxes about like how unfair it is to artists. But ultimately, we decided to just kind of test the system a little bit and say, you know, we've built up this thing where we are doing it all anyways. Let's just do it all ourselves and keep doing it and not have a partner. And so we did that. And yeah, we accomplished it, and I'm super proud of that record. But it was like very exhausting to not have any help along the way, from like literally just hands to do things,
Yeah. And so going into the songs, like you just had free reign of everything, right? You didn't have to obviously
Oh yeah,
clear
but
stuff or
we've
be like,
always
oh, what do you think?
kind of done that, to be honest, though. Like,
Okay.
here's the. I'll give you the secret. If there's any artists listening, this is the secret. Like, granted, you have to find a way to kind of like work before you pay, but like we usually finish our record in secret before anybody knows anything about anything because we just don't like, and then we like to turn it in. And granted, that can change. I think we are entering into a new phase where we're a little more collaborative with our team and whatnot, because we do want, but like from the beginning, like we turned in the record, and then
Mhm.
to RCA, the very first record is complete. Here it is. The second, we finished it, turned it in. Here it is.
Well, even just to add on to that, even signing our deal, we said, this is the record. You either like it or you don't. If you
Yeah.
don't, we're moving on. If you like it, then we'll sign with you. And they go, okay, we like it. And so
Oh,
it
wow.
it allowed us to have the power and a little bit more control in our hands to go, you're not going to A&R this. You're not going to try to touch this. Like, this is the product. So if you're down and you want to push it, let's fucking go.
And
But
we
we're
also
just not
know
going
what
to
we
play the
like.
game.
So, I mean, if an artist goes, we've seen artists go in and they're just like, yeah, well, and they just get in writing cycles or whatever. It's like you're searching for the one or the hit. It's like, yeah, this is the project. This is our vision. This is it, you know? And that's how we've always just approached things. Because again, that's not why we got into the business, to have somebody else tell us those things. That's why
Right.
we're doing it. We're putting up with everything else to have that.
Mm. Which is guys are in a interesting or like a very like different place when it comes to a lot of artists because it's like usually they don't have the opportunity to have that leverage to be like, this is it, take it or leave it. I mean, you guys just
But
straight
they
up sold them.
do. They do. Everybody does.
I
Everybody
guess,
has the
yeah,
ability to walk away. You really do.
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just
The
having the
tough.
balls to do it, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. The tough part is when you go into those meetings and you're talking to some big A&R guy and he's telling you, I can make your song an even bigger hit. I can make you millions of dollars. And as a young one, young artist coming into this industry, nothing about, you're like, well, all that sounds amazing. I
Well, yeah,
trust
I
this guy.
guess. I
And
mean, well,
then,
I would want it to have its best shot. And you
well,
start
and
Right.
saying,
then,
I guess,
well,
and then
no, and then you learn that A&R guy has no music history, no production history, no songwriting history. He's a fucking random guy. And then you're like, why am I taking any advice from you again? Like this
Right.
makes no sense. So yeah, we had, honestly, to credit Dwight Baker, our producer who we worked with for a while.
Mhm.
He has guided and directed us a lot in this industry, and that was one of the things that he initially told us and kind of helped us with was he had been through this mistake many, many times on his own with his own bands and record labels and shit like that. He was like, you got to do it this way. Otherwise you will get wrecked by these big companies. And I credit him because he's kind of been some sort of a fucking guiding angel for us in a lot of different ways, just to keep us from making some mistakes that are made quite frequently. So I think David and I both try to do that for other artists as well, just because we kind of had that in, so to speak.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that you guys give back and give that knowledge up. Yeah, because when we were talking about Can You Feel the Sun, you went in secretly, right? Just went kind of really quickly after that, the album prior, and did the whole thing, and we're like, okay, now here it is. Like we're done without all the noise. Or you said to management, or oh, the label was, you're like, they might get angry or whatever, like, because we're just gonna bring them this whole thing, like, here it is, we're done.
Yeah, but
Without
here's the
any
thing,
input.
man. That's how people, they may say they don't want it that way, but that's what they want. People want to be fed the shit, and
Right.
it is what they want. And you make the shit and you say, this is the shit, check it out. And it is. That's the way it works in my mind. And like, if it's BS and you don't believe it, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. You have to kind of believe it and do it. But like, it's gotten, I mean, I would say the reason we can do that is the reason we can kind of work on our own is because we are both kind of producer engineers ourselves and songwriters. So it's like, and then our for the longest time, Dwight Baker was like the third unofficial guy that was, because he was that's my mentor guy. He wrote with on a lot of songs and produced and mixed a lot of stuff. And then we kind of crossed this really cool road during Am Cinco, where due to really good problems, like Dwight had a lot of success in both of the bands he plays in, The Wind and the Wave and Far From Saints. They're kind of like Americana projects. And he got so busy, he was over there in Europe all this time. And we're kind of in this place when we were making this record that we wanted to enjoy the process. And Dwight had like hardly any time. And so it just became clear that, okay, we're not going to work with Dwight on this one due to scheduling. So we started to come up with a new process, which was us going to Mexico City on this record. And
Oh, wow.
a good majority of the record right there. If you're familiar with Mexico City, there's like the Amsterdam Park area. We're just right there. Just like, honestly, both of our dream scenarios for making a record, just me and him, nobody else, in this beautiful studio with all this light pouring into both the control room and the live room. I mean, I have like a list of 10 things that are the most inspiring musical artistic moments of my life, just being in Mexico City alone with Matthew, walking back and forth from our Airbnb to the studio every day, grabbing tacos for lunch. It was just like, whew, we had a great time.
Wow. Yeah, I'm not familiar with Mexico City, just Tijuana, because I live so close to Mexico and San Diego. But I mean, because it started off, it's moods, right? I'm sad, I'm high, I'm awesome, I'm angry, I'm crazy, I'm Cinco. Did you know, being there in Mexico City, did you write all of those songs in that moment?
Yeah.
And did you know it was going to kind of become this
That was finishing
release process?
Finishing the record was in Mexico City.
Okay.
The concept had already been formed. We'd written maybe like half of them and recorded half of them towards the concept of having all of these different EPs broken out by genre and specific emotionally themed. And then we had like another half the record that we had demoed out and cut some drums to, that we were just going to take there and finish writing. Some songs had sections written, some songs, I mean, they were all in different shape.
Okay. But you knew that you had this idea for doing these individual mood pieces that would all then become one big album.
Yeah, I mean, kind of like, I think that was it took a second to kind of get into that space, but like the way that we write is we'll write whatever comes out a lot of times. So like even before that Mexico session, we had, I mean, a shit ton of songs done, and there are no rules for us. So like whatever song, whatever genre comes out, that's what it's going to be. And for us, I think that's one of our biggest strengths is that, and the thing that we had a challenge to try to figure out this idea was like, we have this R&B song, we have this rock song, we have this hip hop sounding song, we have like all these different songs that we love, every single one of them, but how the fuck do you make this cohesive in a way where your fans are going to understand all this? So it did take a second to kind of lock into that idea. But once we did, we were like, oh yeah, this is the way for sure. Like this makes the most sense. It feels the best as far as listening to it as mood wise. I think our fans will understand it. I think it's a really, really strong way to release something.
Yeah, and I'll share one more just like thing that I'm passionate about that I think this album represents for us as an artist. It's like we don't know where the business is going, but we can only, at least for me, I can only be what I want, where I want it to go, and what I want to happen is I want artists to take the chains off. And like, I want to follow artists that I love what they do and they put out all kinds of stuff. I mean, to me, that's the future of being an artist. Now that we have, like, the whole reason you had to run in a lane back in the days because you had a label telling you what to do in radio, and you have all these people you had to keep it cramming it in there. And it's like, I think like, are all these great artists really so like tunnel vision with their ability to write songs, like, you know, especially like the older artists that would only write disco songs or only write this, and it's like, is that really the case? It's like, no, they were doing that because that's the way the music business was structured, and that's the way they got to their audience. And it's up to the audience, and this is hard right now, the audience has to now shift and say, we have all the choices in the world, what are we going to look to? It's like, we're going to look to artists as the brand, as the thing that we're following. Is like, I'm going to listen to their feed of art coming out as if that is the playlist that I'm listening to. And people, if you look at people's playlists, it's all over the place. People listen to like hip hop into punk rock into, and that's
Right.
what I listen to. It's like that's what we listen to. That's what all artists have always been listening to. Why does it have to be this way? And it's because of an outdated music business model. So we have to think past what was the thing to get to the next thing. And that's what this record for us is like kind of a shot in the dark, but it's like, we're going to break this up almost medicinally. If you're sad, listen to this stuff. We're going to kind of give you the shortcut so you don't have to listen through everything. Just listen to this if you're sad. If you want to just have a good time, listen to the high stuff and, you know, chill out. If you want to feel more encouraged and thoughtful, awesome. I'm awesome. If you want to get some anger out, that's what angry's for. And then the crazy stuff's a little philosophical, you know, it's a little heady, and that's okay too. You want to think about things. It's like, we're all, and that's what Am Cinco. The concept is we are all five of those things. We don't have to be one. We're everything, you know?
Sure. No, 100%. I think it's interesting because when I was younger, it was like I liked punk rock. So it was like you're only allowed to like punk rock. Like, God forbid your friends found out that you listened to this pop artist or whatever. And then you see all the big, you know, the Coachella lineups, and it's like Ariana Grande and
Deftones.
whatever. Yeah. And it's just like all over the place. But that's exactly like kind of what you were saying, David, is like that's everyone's playlist nowadays. It's not, I only listen to this genre, so my whole entire life revolves around just listening to this genre of music.
Dude, it's like, that's why DJs are freaking so popular, because they can just go to wherever they want to go. And like, frankly, like, again, no offense to blues music or anything like that, but after I've watched 2 blues songs, I'm ready for a change. I'm gonna want to hear another guitar solo. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like, and that's coming from a guitar player who fucking loves blues guitar solos and shit. It's like, I got one of those, the whole set, and I'm ready to move on. But like, that's just me. That's what I like. I like a diversity, and that's obviously that's what Matthew does too. So we're just, like I said, you just got to be what you want it to be. Like,
When it comes to this album, were you, once the concept came about, did you have like songs that one of them landed in I'm sad or I'm awesome, but it wasn't like you sat down, you're like, okay, I have this idea, and then you wrote for those specific EPs, or was it kind of as you wrote, you just were able to kind of categorize them?
I think for me, the idea, it was not like clear in the beginning. Like, we probably had like I Am Sad had a little more songs than the other buckets, because it's hard to fit our slow sad songs on records, and like we have so much of that backlog that I think a lot of that was coming out. And so that's also the reason that was the very first thing we went with, because that was the first thing that was completed. So I feel like that was a little bit of a building block. And then all the other things had songs in them. And then the idea of doing 5 was built off of the 5th album and there being 5 pieces to a whole.
Mm.
So and then just, you know, the idea of that resonated with me as well, because like there is an option to just pick the best 10 or
Right.
whatever, but like for me, as quick as we've been pumping out these albums, like, which it does feel fast for compared to like a normal band's like
Yeah,
cycle,
discography or whatever.
right?
Yeah.
Like we're on our 5th album already.
Yeah, it's
And
awesome
so
though.
for me, it was like, yeah, motherfucker, we're on our 5th album and it's 26. Cause we're not just checking the box. That's not why we're doing it. We're doing it because we want to. And so we had a bunch of these songs that we knew would have gotten the outcast. Like there's a bunch of songs that are like, you can only have so many super slow ballads on a MISSIO record. I mean, we don't subscribe to the rule, but that's just the way it ends up working, you know?
Mhm.
So anyways, this,
Well, just to add on to that too, something that we really care about is our fans and our fans. So like a little that is there's a song on there called Monsters. That song is a song that was written in 2014 or something like that and was on one of the original EPs. And our fans, like when we got signed with RCA, they took all that old music down. And our fans for years were like, "Where is Monsters? Where is Monsters?" And we were like, I don't know. I like we'll try to re-release it. I'm not really sure. And so we ended up getting some string parts played and did a little arrangement things on it and re-released that. And so that's a fucking old song. But in mindfulness of our fans who literally have been asking for that, I think that that's a cool thing too, as part of the 5th album, to also bring them into the mix and go, yeah, like we hear you and we see you too, and here's one of your fan favorites. So it's little cool things like that too that I think kind of bring this whole project together.
And you guys have always been so interactive with your fans. I think you were about to do a live stream last time we talked, or you guys were really preparing for it. Maybe it was for the release of the album. I can't remember. But you had this whole idea of like having it completely interactive with the audience, being able to kind of ask questions and really be together with you while you're doing the live stream.
Yeah, we honestly just got done doing 4 shows that we call skeleton shows.
Mhm.
And we have these separate skeleton EPs that are basically
Yeah.
stripped down versions of our main songs. And so we actually took that to the road, and it was really amazing because we got to interact with our fans. We got to tell them some of the backstory behind it. We got to explain the reason why we wrote some of the songs, and it was this really beautiful like storytelling moment for us with frankly a lot of the super fans that are just like really into that B side of stuff that we do. And
Mhm.
it was really, really cool to just kind of engage and hear some of the, we call them the Missio Mafia, but like some of their stories. And they came up to us after the shows and were just telling us about what the songs have meant to them, how the songs have kind of helped them carry through in their difficult struggles in life. And like, to me, that's what it's all about for us. And like we have such an amazing fan base. We love to bring them in. And I think even just like giving them alternative sides to us and shows and things like that really kind of helps just keep them engaged and
Mhm.
show them that we actually really give a fuck about them.
I think that's awesome. On this one of the Skeletons EPs that you have the song "I Run to You," and I think you said that was like one of the first ones you wrote, right, Matthew?
Yeah, that was the very, very first song that we ever dropped as Missio. And yeah, kind of
Crazy.
started to get our foot in the water as far as like overseas goes and blogs picking us up and pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think the one one of the benefits of COVID and all that stuff happening was like it gives fans like myself an inside look to what you all like where you live. Like we would have never known that Matthew's got those 2 card posters behind him, right? If it wasn't for Zoom and all this technology that kind of had to happen as it did, but you all take it to the next level where it's like not only are we going to show you our lives this way, but we'll come to you and play a show and we can ask questions. You can tell us stories. We'll tell you stories about the songs. I think that's so cool. And that means so much to people that, are huge fans of you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thanks
No,
for saying that, man.
yeah, no, it's awesome. And then I love the fact you guys do so many albums, which I think is a lost art form in a way where unless you're Taylor Swift, and not a lot of artists are doing albums. It's like, we'll put out a few singles and then drip it out, and then here's an EP, and then here's the next single, and like it's always an album. And then this time around, here's this massive album of 26 songs, like
Well,
just
dude,
total opposite of what most people are doing.
it's even worse now. Like you mentioned that strategy. I mean, I'm hearing people, they won't even drop a song. They'll do like, let's say they've written 10 choruses. They will put out 10 choruses on TikTok, let's say, and they'll see which one does the best, and then they'll write like half a song based on that chorus that works. And it's all just like data driven. And I'm like, dude,
Whoa.
that's such a fucking horrible strategy as an artist. Like, write your song, go write a song to all 10 of those courses if you like them and they make you feel something. And fuck the data. Like I understand it's the business, like, and like you're trying to be successful, but I that shocked me when I heard that, because it's just that feels so anti-artist to me. And yeah, I don't know. It's driving me crazy right now.
No, I could 100%. And it's like, yeah, because TikTok essentially is just like a huge, testing ground for anything. Like, okay, do people care? Did this get a million views or whatever? And if it didn't, no, I guess that's a dud song, but you never
Right.
know, right? It could be the best song ever written, but you didn't continue on with it. That's what always drove me nuts with radio, is like, uh, they would send out these like tests, or like you could sign up for the email list, and then you could take a part in a survey for the station's music, and then they'd send all these songs, and they would take 20-second clips of the chorus, and the only people that would respond to them were people that had, the station I was on had been around for 30 years, so they're responding to like the Red Hot Chili Peppers songs that were 30 years old on an 18 to 34 radio station. And it's like, these songs are older than 95% of your
Yeah.
demo, but these are the people that are responding. So you're like, oh, well, they must love this song. They must love to hear, Scar Tissue every other hour. And it's like, I don't think people care. They want to hear a MISSIO record more times than once or twice every other hour. Like, I don't know. It just reminds me of kind of like that their approach, but now I mean, I don't know
Yeah,
how
I mean,
much.
at some point it became a desperate, and I highlight the word desperate, a desperate attempt to hold on to listeners. And that changed from like this role of like, hey, check out this new shit that you need to be listening to. This is the
Mhm.
new, like this curation of art that used to be the radio, that used to be really helpful, frankly, for people who to like, I'm not saying the radio is always cool or
Mhm.
whatever. There's always, that's up to interpretation, but it was helpful to say, here's some new stuff that other people have checked out and they think is cool too, and you can check out. And now you've got these like new music Fridays and things like that that are like whatever whoever's curating it, it sucks. I don't know what's
Yeah,
going on,
right.
but it sucks. And it's
Well,
not because artists aren't capable now, or there
well,
isn't good art being made.
it's just the new version of the radio people coming to them and being like, this is our new artist, like you should put them on this
Right.
Yeah.
the
So
editorial stuff. So
That's very political.
yeah, it
right.
always is, right? It always
Yeah.
comes back to the money and all that. But no, that's funny that you say that, because that would be, I was so frustrated. But but hats off to Regan for being like, as a
Word.
serious station, they didn't have to worry really as much about ads, but they also were like, well, to utilize this and play bands that don't have Atlantic Records coming over and saying you need to play this artist.
I mean, it made an enormous impact, and I mean, we still have a great relationship with Regan, and I mean, yeah, he went out on a limb for us back before anything, and to the point earlier, it sure did make that limb we were standing on when we're like telling RCA, this is the thing, you either take it or you leave it. It was nice already having Regan on board and playing the song. So I mean, we were very fortunate to kind of cross his path at the right time.
100%. So you're doing a tour to support the album, right, overseas mostly. I think you're doing a show in Colorado, maybe your old hometown, Matthew. I can't remember. Were
Yeah.
you from Colorado Springs?
Yeah, it's we played Black Sheep I think last year, a couple years ago, and that's literally that's where we're playing again this year, and it's where I went to shows growing up. I mean, I saw like all these hardcore bands back in the day there, so
Dope.
it's pretty cool every time I go back there to just be like, dude, that never in a million years would I thought that I'd be coming back playing this stage as a high school kid, you know, in a successful band. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I bet that's probably one of the bigger, I mean, playing huge venues across the world, but to go home to your hometown and be like, I remember seeing bands here, whether or not it's as many tickets sold as another place, but it's just the nostalgia of like,
Oh yeah.
I'm here, I'm on this stage. Like I used to come to shows here all the time.
Well,
That's
yeah,
cool.
even something I thought was cool last time we played there was going to the green room. And I remember being a teenager and being like, man, where are the bands at? Like, I want to know, like, where are they hanging? What's the vibe? And then to be the band, it'd be like, this is where they're at, like this small ass little cement
Yeah.
room.
Right, right.
Smell
It's
the
just,
fryers, you know? It's like
yeah, yeah,
The
it's just,
behind the curtain look, you're like, oh, I guess this isn't as exciting as
yeah,
I thought it
yeah,
would be.
yeah, totally. Yeah,
Well, that's
totally.
amazing. Yeah, so the tour is coming up, which is huge. And you said you haven't really had a chance to tour all that much since,
we
2020 being ripped off the road in Czech
we did
Republic or
like
whatever it was.
we've done a very patchwork thing since we were like pre-COVID, which pre-COVID we were just on the road doing like every city in the US, and then
Hmm.
we'd jump over, we'd do Europe, and then we'd come back and do this, and I mean we were just constantly going. And I think for Villain, I think there was like 8 or 10 shows that we just strategically placed around the country. When we did these acoustic runs, we just did Texas. The Colorado shows are just intentionally like they're gonna be on the day before and the day of the album drop. So
Yeah, it's
they're
cool.
special shows. We're literally doing like a set list of I Am Cinco songs, and then like so it's gonna be like a really unique Missio show. And then obviously in Europe, and the headline stuff, we'll be doing the full like Missio headline set with all of the full catalog now, which is
Yeah.
fun to write set list now, man. Golly, kind of difficult but
Yeah,
fun.
super
Yeah, I was gonna
difficult.
say so many albums and so many songs you got to figure out there. It's almost
Right.
probably like curating an album track list where it's like, okay, will this go into this, or how when should we play this?
We literally have over 100 songs now, which is insane. And so like, yeah, trying to pick a balance between what do the fans want to hear, but what do we want to play also? And
Hmm.
then, you know, like we'll go back and listen to certain albums that there's songs that we kind of forget about. And we're like, that song would be amazing. This song would be amazing, but you have 60 minutes to play or whatever for a lot of these festivals. And so it's tough to map it all out in that a time allotment.
Yeah, with 100 songs. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's. Do you guys play "I See You"? Because I remember you saying, Matthew, that was like your favorite song you ever worked on.
Yeah, yeah. We actually we just so that skeletons the shows that we were talking about in
Uh huh.
December, we did a new version of that basically that's stripped down. And so
Wow.
we're gonna actually start implementing that version to see kind of how fans react to it. It's very beautiful. It's very like French cinema almost
Yeah.
in a strange way. And yeah, it's the skeletons thing that we do is such a deep part of Missio at this point, and I think our fans really resonate with it that we're gonna for our shows try to incorporate more of those elements to where you're kind of getting the best of all that we do, which is the heavy stuff and the full show, but then being able to strip it back where we can kind of showcase what you were talking about at that San Diego session,
Oh
where we get to
man.
showcase our abilities and like our songwriting and like really strip it down to where people get a glimpse into what we can do.
Yeah, I mean, again, that session was just the, like I just remember sitting there being like, holy shit, like this is a band. Like we hadn't really seen much of you yet as far as like our station, and then I was like, damn, like
So thanks,
these guys
man.
know what's
Thanks,
up.
man.
But
Thanks, Ben.
thank you both for coming back on here. It's so great to see you. It's so great to be able to chat again. I asked you this question last time, but I'm going to ask again. Maybe it's changed within the past 3 years. But do you have any advice for aspiring artists?
You are allowed to do whatever the hell you want to do. Like there are no rules, there are no boundaries. something I tell people a lot of time is like when we go to write a song, it's starting with a blank canvas, and whatever comes out, comes out. You can write a bad song that day and it's okay. You don't have to release it, but write it. Just let whatever's going to come out, because a lot of times we'll stumble into really amazing ideas because of a song that sucks, and we'll find one tone that's amazing from that, and we'll start from there. Like, just get it out and don't worry so much about the perfectionism or the fear of failure. Get it out, put it in a Dropbox folder, and come back to it 2 weeks later, 2 months later, 1 year later, whenever. And you may be really, really surprised at what you can pull from that. But I just feel like so many artists walk around with this idea that everything that they do has to be ultra successful and ultra perfect. And it's like, no, like, get it out and just let it be messy and let it be chaotic.
Love it.
All right. Keep it fun. That's going to be my advice, because it's going to break your spirit quickly. If it's not fun and fueled by passion, then you just quit. I truly like quit. Like it's if it's not like the most fun thing that you've ever done in your life, like the thing, not being a celebrity, not making it, because that's not going to happen. So just like, if making music or playing drums or playing guitar is like the most fun shit that you can ever think of having, then you got to find a way to keep it fun, and you got to keep that passion. And like, maybe fun's a limiting word, but that's the word that works for me. Like, even in our sad songs, I can hear us having fun, because we're there going as sad as we possibly can, and for us, that's fun. Like, there's a sadistic part of that is fun for us. And so, yeah, that's where I'd say.
I mean, to
Love
add on to that, like we go into several songwriting sessions. I mean, honestly, recently, where you work with people who've been doing this for a long time, songwriting specifically, and producers or whatever. And we leave those rooms feeling a little sad because those people lack the ability to have fun, or to have passion, or to show like, holy shit, this is amazing. It's just very much like, let's get this done. Like, I do this every day. And they've lost the spark. And so, to David's point, it's like, dude, you got to have that spark. And if the spark's not there, you got to either find a way to get it, or maybe you need to take some time away to get that back, or do something different. Because really, when other people come into those rooms or those sessions, and you are not able to be the full extent of yourself and have fun, and allow that passion to be there, it's a miserable experience for everybody. It becomes this like, I have to do this instead of I want to do this. So yeah.
Bringing it backward.